Okay, can you see the slide?
Yeah, that's fine. We can see that, Kevin. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you. The topic for this proposal is toughness in heavy S355JL structures, steel microalloyed vanadium. So just a bit of a recap, and this is taken largely from an ex-chairman of Vanatech, Peter Mitchell, who did a lot of good work on properties in vanadium steels in the 90s and I think in the 2000s as well. So I'd just like to start by just summarizing why we have poor toughness in heavy conventionally rolled niobium plate, and that's because niobium, first of all, it inhibits austenite for crystallization, but the microstructure during hot rolling, and I'm talking conventional rolling, consists of a mixture of fine elongated or pancake austenite grains of high surface to a high surface to volume ratio, or delta, along with coarser, relatively underformed austenite grains with low delta. And the relative proportion of these depends on the rolling parameters, again, finishing temperature, the amount of strain applied, particularly below the TNR. Now, lower temperatures and larger strains would promote finer deformed structures that conform to fine ferrite and pearlite. But the opposite would be true for the coarse austenite. Now, coarse structures responsible for poor toughness for thick plate. In other words, low strains and high temperatures. Just to show you some microstructures of what I'm talking about. So this is really niobium titanium with a little bit of vanadium, niobium titanium dominant, where you have these very coarse areas of Wittmann-Stitten ferrite. This would have been transformed from that underformed austenite that I was telling you about. And the microstructure, this was 30 millimeter plate at the quarter width and half thickness, and this was 85 millimeter plate on the quarter width and quarter thickness. So this is a recipe for disaster and gives you very, very poor toughness, well below the 27 joule criterion that is required. Now, contrary to this, you have vanadium steels with 25 millimeter plate, for example, on the left-hand side, where you have, and I'll deal with that in a little bit more detail in the following slide. You don't experience that very coarse structure as shown here, the repeated structure on the right-hand side. You do get a relatively finer polygonal ferrite pearlite steel in the absence of the Wittmann-Stitten, and with consequently superior toughness. Now, to improve toughness just reverting back to the niobium steels, you would have to introduce an extra processing step. And also, of course, in the absence of controlled rolling, this is conventional rolling, you would have to normalize your material. Well, first of all, you'd have to either introduce controlled rolling or otherwise known as normalized rolling, where finishing is conducted at low temperatures. However, if there's a difficulty to guarantee properties below toughness properties below -20, and also you need extra mill time required to achieve these temperatures. So it's a disadvantage, particularly during periods of full production. Okay, sorry, I just missed the first step. You either have to normalize the material, or you would have to normalize roll of material. So both of those are extra steps and uneconomical. The other alternative is to apply accelerated cooling after rolling in the region of 10 to 15 Celsius per second to an interrupt temperature of about 550, where you get a fine mixture of polygonal and secure ferrite and a good distribution of pearlite and carbides. But the accelerated cooling demands even cooling. You can easily mess shape up if you don't do it properly. Vanadium's microalloy steels, on the other hand, and typically in the region of 0.05% vanadium, have no effect on the crystallization behavior down to quite low temperatures, up to, let's say, 825 Celsius, with or without delays. The recrystallized austenite grain size is relatively constant over a wide temperature range. Thus, toughness in vanadium steels is less sensitive to variations in finishing and rolling temperatures than in the only microalloyed grades. Mitchell did some work in the 20 to 25 millimeter range in the 90s, and he found that for a range of compositions, processing was toughness to be very good. He found that the sharpening V-notch impact energy or toughness is little influenced by the extension of precipitation strengthening. Thus, it is possible to strengthen extensively by vanadium polynitride hardening without sacrificing toughness. And this was done by Morrison, and I think, Dave, you were involved with this as well. These are graphs just showing the influence of vanadium content versus transition temperature. You can see pretty good at over a wide range of vanadium contents. And the bottom graph showing the finishing temperature over quite a wide range as well. Even as high as above 1,000 degrees, it's still going to give you a transition below -40. Yeah. But this is for, yeah. And then, Chinese group, Kaifu, showed that, and Ma and Kaifu showed that nitrogen additions to vanadium steels will lead to, the transformation and enhanced toughness, and would also be promoted by manganese sulfide precipitation. So if you have low nitrogen content, you would have cleavage fracture, as well as if the vanadium is too rich, you'd also have cleavage. But if you have a good nitrogen-rich vanadium combination, you would get ductile fracture. So the objective of this work would be to determine, as I said, Mitchell did work up to 25 thick. We wanted to see now if Mitchell's findings are valid for thicker than 30. And this is of particular interest to us recently, where we are entering into the local wind tower project market, where base thicknesses are going up to 42 millimeters thick. So it's crucial for us to do a good assessment of toughness in the thicker, and of course, preferably as-roll plate to facilitate on-time delivery and other considerations. We don't want to go through the extra normalizing step. We don't really have facilities for intensive control role. So on the academic side, we would like to optimize these parameters controlling sharply toughness in heavy vanadium nitrogen plate. We want to see what the influence of chemistry, finishing temperature, feeding rates, and particle size and distribution have on toughness. Chemistry, the scope would be vanadium nitrogen steel with those typical limits over there, 65 to 150 nitrogen and 0507 vanadium, and then compare that with either vanadium titanium only or vanadium titanium with a little bit of vanadium steel in it, grades of which we currently have. And then we would do, the work would be split between simulation and actual industrial trials. Simulations would be, the variables that we'd look at would be steel type, which are the two above, total thickness, total strain, which is a function of thickness, plate exit temperature and cooling rate. Outputs would be microstructure, hardness, volume fraction, and size of precipitates of VCN and the vanadium carbonitrides. Equipment would be make use of dial atomics at odd level. Particularly good simulations can be done on thick plate, where the strain is limited. And then we'd use, of course, hardness machine, light optical microscopy, 10, and selected ESD. And then plate rolling trials, we would use the same approach, but include tensile and sharper tests, of course. Okay, these are the references used in the compilation of this document. Then relevance to the vanadium usage, we would these are typical costs of ferrovanadium, vanadium masses per ton, and our local demand would be so much, and then global potential titanium or estimated titanium vanadium cost globally for this would be over $1 million. Where this fits in with the vanadium respiratory research is to demonstrate the ability of vanadium nitrogen steels to use economical conventional rolling to achieve good strength and toughness in heavy plate in the as roll condition. Duration, we plan to only start in February next year and end a year later. Or no, sorry, 2 years later. The budget would be broken up as follows. There would be no charge in the collection of samples, and overall, hopefully a good variation in chemistries. And then it would be execution of the scope as mentioned, with machining costs, lab simulations, TEM work that would have to be outsourced, and then preparation reporting at meetings, and final report we could come to $22,000. And that's just a sort of a description of our research institute. I've shown this multiple times, so probably not necessary to show it again, but I've just included it for completeness sake. And then, yeah, that's basically it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Kevin. Just to clarify, the start date's February 24, I take it.
I beg your pardon, yes. It's 24. Indeed it is. Indeed it is. Yeah. So I missed that one. Yeah, so it'll take about a year. Yes.
Any questions or comments for Kevin? Just a sort of question / comment from me, really. You showed some, well, to us, nice pictures of a niobium steel with a very duplex mixed grain structure, which we like to see. We're very keen to emphasize that vanadium gives you a more uniform microstructure. And Debole Chakrabarti, who's on the call now, has done some great work looking at mixed grain sizes. And one of the things that I'd like to try and emphasize is that niobium segregates an awful lot more than vanadium. So you're starting off with, in niobium, with a sort of mixed distribution of niobium to start off with, which then feeds through to the mixed microstructure in the final product. So that's a message I'm sort of keen to get across. So I hope you'll be able to do that for us.
Well, not only is it mixed, but it's coarse and mixed on conventional rolling, which makes it particularly dangerous and forces you to do a subsequent treatment. You know, so as shown here, I suppose that, and you're right, Dave, the diffusion. I mean, niobium is atomic mass is 92 gram per mole, whereas the vanadium is almost half that, 47, isn't it? So you would expect it to be more sluggish in its diffusion rate. Yeah, and I would imagine, you know, I can't remember the diffusivity of the two elements. Yeah.
Sorry, Kevin, I forgot to mention to you, and I forgot to mention for proposals in general, that what we'll do is these will be considered at the next Vanatec directors meeting, which will be in October 24th, 25th. So we'd expect to reach a decision sometime shortly after that. So you can expect to hear to the end of October, early November, as to whether we can proceed. So.
Okay.
Okay. Any more questions on this proposal for Kevin? Okay, well, thank you very much for that, Kevin. And as I say, you'll
okay.
in the fullness of time.
Thanks.
Right, thank you, Kevin. Right, we're on to our last proposal of the day. So thank you very much for your patience, and I do apologise that we're running a little behind time. Our final proposal is from OCAS in Belgium, which is related to ArcelorMittal.